نونرین چاپمنی و کسی کو پر على قدر الویدری ام خیراتنا هر کسی دیکن.
First of all, we would like to welcome you all the representatives of the press and everybody else who is paying attention and being ready today. So welcome.
ام ایرو الویدری لسر فعالیت دولت ترکیه و میتا ترکیه کو دخازل اوروبا گشتی یعنی الهر دری دجه مخالفه کو ام جناف دنه سویقست و پیک بینن لسر و ام ایرو دخازن آگهداری که بدن رای گشتی.
We would like to inform the public opinion about the activities of the Turkish government as well as the Secret Service MIT that they have been planning all over Europe's assassinations against the oppositions from Turkey.
چما ایرو چونکی پشتی 10 روز ده 11 مهل و داره المحکمه بروکسل ده دجه دولت ترک محکمه کی هيا کو ام جی تی دنه دجه منو حوال رمزی کو ام مرکز دنه خواستن ما بکوجن 2017 حتی نهال و محکمه 11 مهل چه به ام دخازم بالا رای گشتی بکشن سر و محکمه.
And why we are planning this press conference today, because on the 11th of March, there will be a hearing at one of the Belgian courts about the activities of Turkish government and the MIT targeting me and my colleague Remzi Kartal since 2017. So we had a suit against the Turkish government, and there will be a hearing on the 11th. Therefore, we would like to inform the public opinion about this case.
ام ایرو 6 کس الویدری تولی جوینا چاپمنیه دبن یک از یک حوال رمزی قرطال کو ام هر دو و محکمه هنه ده وکی دعواجینه.
And today there will be 6 persons joining this press conference, including myself and my colleague Remzi Kartal, that we are the complainant in this case.
یه ده برس یان فرمون اوقات ما و دعوا هنه ده Belgica.
And also our lawyer Jan Fermon representing us in this case from Belgium.
اوقات کیمه دیجی فرانسا یکو دعوا سه حوالین ما کوش طرف میتا ترکیه و هاتن سویقست کرن یه دعوه آنتوان کومت جیب سر online بشتارده بن ها دیده دخویه.
And online that we also have a lawyer from Paris, Antoine Comte, who is representing our colleagues, our comrades who have been executed, assassinated by the Turkish Secret Service MIT in Paris.
الویدر حواله کی ما روزنامه‌وان هایکو بغداد اوجی کسی که روزنامه‌وان و مخالفه و جبر تهدید دولت ترکیه ترکیه هاتیا اروپا نهال آلمانیا دمینه بن تهدید ده اوجی نهوت پاراستن.
And also we have journalist Hayko Bağdat, who is from Turkey and who had to flee Turkey and and come to Germany, and now currently he is receiving the threats. Therefore, he is also receiving protection from the German government, and now he is among us, and because also he is under threat from the Turkish authorities.
Her vaha برز ارک آجرر اوجی روزنامه‌وان کش ترکیه اوجیش بر زختن دولت ترکیه راویه نها هاتیا آلمانیا لوی درجی ایریش سر هاتن کرن اوجی نها همبر و ایریش و تهدیدال بن پاراستنا پلیس آلمانیا ده اوجی online بشتار بوده.
And online joining us the journalist Acarer, who also had to flee Turkey, come to Germany due to the oppression against him, and in addition to that, he was also targeted physically in Germany, and now he's also enjoying protection from the German government against the threats that he has been receiving.
و جوینا چاپمنیه ده امل سر تهدید دولت ترکیه و کتشتی کو کتین دست مده و دست راگهاندنه ده و دست پولیس دل سروی هم تخواستن رعیا گشتی آگاهدار بکن جبوه طرف کمیتا لیکولین یا کنکه و belge ki cihatiye amade kirin em ve belge ya ku ser faaliyete ve peşkeş bikin.
And today we would like to inform you all about the threats that we have been gathering, as well as through the press, that all about the threats against the opposition abroad. And at the end, we can also would like to share a dossier prepared by the investigation committee by the Kurdish National Congress, in which you can find all the background and detailed information about these threats.
Belge eve em belge hem weki rapor peşkeşi çapemeniyet kin hem jî yeku online beşdar dibin ve em ser yani online jî herkesî re parve bikin. Ez dixwazim belge Kurd bidim naskirin paşê mafê axaftinê bidim hevalên.
This is the document that we will deliver here for the ones who are present in the room, but it's also available online, so anyone watching us online can also reach this document. And I would like to give you a short introduction, short summary of the informations given in this dossier.
Ve belgede yani ser xabatên devleta Türk mitê ku tiştê ku demên derbazbûyî del Avrupa kirin yani demê derbazbî û heta niha hinekî Kurd destpêkekî wî rengî heye.
And in this document, you will find information about the recent activities of the Turkish National Intelligence Service, MIT, and their activities all over Europe against the opposition.
Her wiha belgede ku sala 1994 Danimarka suîqestekî dijî İmdat Yılmaz ku welatparêzekî Kurd li hatî kirin behsa wê tê kirin.
And in this document, there is also information about assassination of a Kurdish patriot, Imdat Yilmaz, who was assassinated in 1994 in Denmark.
Belgede behsa mit û rêxistinên wê û her wiha vê dema paşî ku dewleta Tirkiye Tayyip Erdoğan rêxistinekî di çêkiriye Sadat ku ew jî va kara ve eleqedar e ew têne naskirin.
And in these documents, there are informations about MIT as well as the relating organizations. In addition to that, there is also Sadat, S-A-D-A-T. It's a military contractor or security organization that have been working together with the Turkish government.
O çünkü Serukê Sadatê Tanrı Adnan Tanrı verdi generalekî gevne ewa şêwirmendê Tayyip Erdoğan yê hela parastinê de ye yani wî rengî hevra dixebitin tevlî civînê ewlekariyê jî dibe.
Head of Sadat is a former general of the Turkish army called Adnan Tanrıverdi. He's also a counselor for the Turkish president about relating to the security issues, and he's also a member of the Security Council, which is gathering regularly on a regular basis.
Her wiha da belgede faaliyetên devleta Türk taybetî jî ku li Avusturya derket kesekî navê Feyyaz Öztürk ku bî îtiraf kir ku dijî Bêrîvan Aslan jineke endamê partiya keska û parlamenter Avusturya xwestin wê bikujin dewleta Avusturya vî warî de ew kes girt û paşê mehkeme çêbû yani wî warî de derket ragihandinê.
And also you can find information about Feyyaz Öztürk, a Turkish citizen living in Austria, and he was arrested and then he confessed that he was planning an assassination against Berivan Aslan, a Kurdish politician, member of the Green Party in Austria, as well as a former member of the parliament.
Ve Feyyaz Öztürk axaftinê xwe de derê xwe de dibêje me ça civîn çêkirine, ça ez hatma vazîfedar kirin, ça merkez aval Prag'ye yani sefareta Türkiye ya Prag'e gotiye vakara yani organize dike.
And Feyyaz Öztürk also expressed in his deposition to the Austrian authorities the details about the meeting where he was given this task to assassinate Berivan Aslan, and he also said that all these activities are being coordinated by the Turkish embassy in Prague in Czech Republic.
Belgede yani beşeki esası jî ser dava me ku dava 11 mehêl vê derê bê dîtin mehkema Brükselê de 2017 ça organize kirin ku xwestin me bikujin.
And a significant part of this document is about the hearing on the 11th of March about the activities of the Turkish intelligence service in 2017, how they planned an assassination against me and my colleague.
الفيد belge de jî yani de û mahkemê de diyar dibe awqatê me jî wê vî warî de agahdariya jî bide li Türkiye organizekî çêkiriye berpirsê wa jî Yakub Koç kul dosyayê de heye niha jî li Tirkiyeyê berpirsekî resmî ye sefareta waya Parîsê de dixebitiya û merkez Parîs wekî organizekî çêkirine hatin vê derê xwestin me bikujin organize çêkirin.
And the further details you will receive from our lawyer, but it's about a person called Yakub Koç, who he was a former employee at the Turkish embassy in Paris, how they planned and organized an assassination and sent assassins to Belgium in order to assassinate us.
Tabii Yakub Koç tinênîne grûbekin Zekeriya Çelik bile ku gelekî kesê dijîtê de hene hatine vê derê derdora bîna me keşif kirine eva hemî qeydê polîs de hene telefonê we hatine guhdarî kirin ça wê êrişê bîna me bikin ça dixwazin me jehrî bikin ça dixwazin bomba bavêjin ça dixwazin me bikin ev hemî telefona de her tişt îspat kiriye wî rengî dosyayê de heye û eva vê belgê de jî behsa wê hatiye kirin.
And Yakub Koç is not the only person. There is also another person called Zekeriya Çelik, and they also came and surrounded the building where we are based and then did some research. And according to the information provided by the police, that they listened to their telecommunication, and they've also reached details about the assassination plans, about how they would actually poison these persons or how they would use bombs against all the details you will find also during this case.
belgede fotoğrafı ve hemiya jî heye. Yani yeku vî karî dikin ça le sefîrê wayê ew ke İsmail Hakkı Musa re yeku Parîsê wî re ew kirine çünkü ew berpir ew jê ne tenê sefîr e aynî demê berpirsê mîtê ye jî ça hevrekar kirine Sadatê re fotoğrafê we hene Saraya Tirkiyeyê şêwirmendên Tayyip Erdoğan re fotoğrafê we hene yani hemî tişt dikê ku bin agahdariya Tayyip Erdoğan de ev organize hatiye çêkirin û dixwazin melvadera suîqast bikin.
In this document, you will also find all the pictures and photographs of the documents that these persons have pictures taken together with İsmail Hakkı Musa, who is not only ambassador of the Turkish government in Paris, but also a responsible or person in charge of the activities of the Turkish intelligence organization. And there are also pictures taken in the palace with the counselors of President Erdogan, as well as with the chairperson of Sedat, which all indicate that all these assassination plans were directed or ordered by the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan.
Her wiha belgede suîqasta kul 2013 li nehê meha yekî li Parîsê hatî kirin sê jinên Kurd ku li wê derê hatin înfas kirin ji teref mîtê ve agadariyê wê hene belgeyên wê hene belgê resmî yê Tirkiye yê ku yê mîtê bi xwe çêkirîn ew tê de hene.
Also in this dossier, there are informations provided by the Turkish official documents, official documentation prepared by the Turkish intelligence service regarding the assassination of the 3 Kurdish women who were executed in Paris on the 9th of January 2013.
Yani ça li wê derê yani tiştê ku li Parîsê hatî kirin çi rengî Mehkema Fransa an dewleta Fransa vî warî de kêm terxemî kir yani tişt tam dernexistin holê nav hene tiştê de hene hemî tişt diçe Tirkiye tenê yek kes Ömer Güney ew tinê xwastin wî tinê mehkeme bikin ew jî paşê mir yani wekî xwastin dosyayê bigirin niha jî هي طلب هيك ودوسيا نو وبب çünkü belge نو هنا اندام ميته هات نگرتن اطراف و هنا في وارد لازم دولت ترکیه الپاریس به محکمه کرن.
And all this information also shows that the French authorities, they omitted, they failed to do their due diligence about this case, and they only wanted to try bring a person in front of the court called Ömer Güney, who later died due to natural causes. So in this way, they wanted to actually close this case. However, there are new documents, new evidence, as well as the confessions from the members of MIT, and there is a demand for the reopening this case in France in order to try the Turkish government in front of a French court.
هر وها فعاليات دن ين ميته يفي دما باشي طيبتيجي لألمانيا يعني تشكرنا تشنكرنا وهر وها او لیستین کو انفاز هاتن پیشکش کردن کو 55 کس راگهاندن ده درکت پلیس و والاتا جی تدبیر گرتن یعنی ناو 55 کسا کو یه بین انفاز کردن تیدا درباز بین هو هنی کشوا کسا تفلی جوینا چاپمنیه دبن یعنی و در بحثا و بکرن بلگه وی واریده yani geleki işte VOIG tede hem peşkeşi çapamaniye etkin.
And in this dossier, you will also find information about regarding the recent activities of MIT in Germany, especially about the execution lists, death lists, in which there are 55 names, and all the persons and the respective countries where they live are all informed, and they have been also given protection. And some of the names in this list are today present in this press conference.
Naha şve belge tişte va faaliyetên ku va salê derbazbûyî hemiyê tê xuya kirin ku dewleta Türkiye taybetî jî rêveberiya Tayyip Erdoğan bin sêwana mîtê de organize çêkiriye Avrupa xelkê organize dike çeteya organize dike vê derê dijî muxalifa suîqasta dike û tehdîta dike êrîşa dike.
All this information and evidence indicate the activities of the Turkish government, especially of those by the administration of Erdogan, how they are using MIT or the organizations, operations that organized by MIT, as well as they are recruiting the mobs and several other people in order to assassinate or take steps against the opposition living in Europe.
Mesele tenê ve Belçika ve sınırdar nine tenê dijê me nine dijê hemû muxalîfaya em ji bo vê bangil rêveberiyên Yekîtiya Avrupa hemiyê dikin vî warî de tedbîra bigirin hêca zêdetir êrîş çênebîn xwîn nehatî rijandin lazim el hember dîktatoriya Tayyip Erdoğan û êrîş û êrîşkariya wî tedbîr bigirtin.
And these cases are not only limited to Belgium or against us, there are all the other members of oppositions are under threat. Therefore, we call upon the European Union and their governments in order to take necessary steps before more people have been assassinated or before there were more blood shed, in order to take very effective steps against the dictatorship of the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his activities all over Europe.
Ez vê dê axaftina xwe dibirim birêz yan Fermon.
Now we will listen to Jan Fermon, our lawyer.
Thank you very much, Aydar. Of course, this press conference.
On n'entend pas.
This press conference. This mic doesn't seem to work. I think. Is this better? Okay. Oh, it's okay. First of all, this press conference is organized in the framework of. In the framework of the case that will be heard by the Brussels Court of First Instance on the 11th of March. But by respect for the court, I will not today plead the case before you, before I plead it before the judge. Of course, the main arguments we will develop, the discussion with the defendants and the discussion also with the public prosecutor, we will conduct it on the 11th of March. And I invite all of you to be present there. It's a public hearing. I think it's important for all of you to know in detail the arguments that will be developed in that frame. Nevertheless, of course, I want to give you some elements of understanding today, which are necessary in the framework of this press conference. In this case, 4 citizens, 4 individuals will stand trial for 2 accusations. First accusation is the fact of being member of a terrorist, of a criminal gang. But the more important part is that these 4 individuals are also accused of participation in different degrees in the activities of a terrorist organization. And the reason, because we think there is indeed a terrorist organization at work, is that the investigation has clearly shown that the aim of this group was to organize an attack on Mr. Aydar and Mr. Kartal in order to eliminate them by storming the building of the Kurdish National Congress where they work in Brussels and organizing there, and I quote, a bloodbath. I quote from the tapped telephone conversations between the participants in this plot. The fight started in February 2017, and because of exceptional circumstances on which I will not elaborate today because it's a sensitive matter, we were able to get more or less in real time information about this plot as it developed, information which of course we shared with the Belgian judicial authorities in order to allow them to organize an investigation and to discover the truth in this situation. As Mr. Aydar said very rightly, the subject of this press conference is not directly the Belgian case, because as I told you, we will argue on that on the 11th. And of course, I will be answering questions if there are any after this intervention. But the subject of this press conference is to show that this attempt of assassination organized by a group is not a unique fact and is actually a part of a pattern which we can see throughout Europe of attempts, intimidation, violence organized by the Turkish state against Kurdish activists, Kurdish institutions, and also against opponents, individuals critical to the present administration in Turkey. The heart of the attempt to kill Mr. Aydar and Mr. Kartal was, of course, to be executed in Belgium, where they reside and where they work. But the heart of this whole plot, the mastermind of this whole plot, was both partially in France and partially in Ankara. And we discovered that because due to the investigations conducted by the Belgian police, but also at the request of the Belgian investigating judge in France, we discovered the existence in France of a group that is in direct contact with the presidential palace in Ankara. And when we say it's in direct contact, we actually, it's not just an allegation, it's pictures of individuals standing in the presidential palace, individuals of this group in France who was behind the attempt to organize Mr. Kartal and Mr. Aydar here in Belgium. We have pictures discovered in the framework of this French investigation of organizers of this attempt, especially the man called Jakub Koch, which was already mentioned before by Mr. Aydar, in an office in the presidential palace in Ankara, in the office of a member of the National Security Council of Mr. Erdogan. And so when we say that there is a direct link between this plot and the presidential palace in Ankara, that is not just an allegation like that. It's an allegation based on documents that were discovered in the framework of this investigation. Direct links with national presidential advisor, member of the National Security Council, an academic, so-called academic specialized in the denial of the genocide on the Armenian people, but also pictures showing members of this group. And I'm trying to find it back immediately for you. Pictures of members of this group together with another individual, the man on the right here, man named Adnan Tanriverdi, which is which was at that time also presidential advisor, member of the National Security Council, but more than that, he is the founder and the director of a private military company, which can be compared to Blackwater's or maybe to Wagner, company which is called in some publications, some US publications, the Revolutionary Guard of Erdogan. Well, this man, the file showed that members of the group that were behind this assassination plot were in close contact with this man, Adnan Tanriverdi, which is really a very, very, very important piece of the parallel security and military apparatus that the Erdogan regime has been building. And so it's not only about a group of 4 people that are prosecuted in Belgium trying to assassinate, trying to set up a plot to assassinate my 2 clients in this. It's also about the direct involvement of Ankara and of the presidential palace in Ankara in this plot, the direct contacts between this group and the people in Ankara. It shows very clearly that, and I think the rest of the press conference will also illustrate that, it shows very clearly that we are not before an isolated plan of 4 a little bit mad individuals, 4 individuals acting as free electrons. No, we are facing here an organized policy of intimidation, violence, murder, violent attacks against Kurdish individuals, organized by Ankara through its security apparatus, through the MIT, but also through Sadat and through parallel agencies, which of course collaborate with the official agencies in a very close way. And we see that pattern in Belgium, we see it in Germany, and we will hear our 2 friends living in Germany on that. We see it in France with the assassination of the 3 Kurdish activists, women activists in 2013, on which my colleague and friend Antoine Comte will say a few words in a moment. We see it in Austria. Actually, we see it throughout Europe, almost in every country, this pattern of violence, which, by the way, is I would say, is escalating, because Mr. Aydar earlier said there is the assassination of an activist in 1994 in Denmark. Since then, there were a series of, I would say, violent actions undertaken by regime-related groups. And the report Mr. Aydar presented today illustrates that. Since 2013, I think we went with the assassination in Paris, we went into a new phase where the direct attacks on the life physical integrity of Kurdish representatives has now been put on the agenda by these security agencies. And I think the Belgian trial illustrates that, the trial in France illustrates that, and I think the authorities should be, the European authorities should be extremely attentive to that, pay attention to that, and take the necessary measures to stop that illegal terrorist activity organized by the Turkish state and by its agents in different European countries. I will not go into more detail of the case now, because as I said, I want to reserve my pleading for the court. But of course, if any of you have questions after this, I'm willing to answer further questions. I think Mr. Aydar asks me now to pass the floor to my colleague and friend Antoine Comte to speak about the situation in France.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Can you hear me?
We hear you perfectly.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank the press club for organizing a conference on this very important issue of death squads moving around Europe and assassinating, or eventually, in the worst case, on the base of a hit list, as the British would say, assassinating people who are opposed to Erdogan's autocratic, if not dictatorship, government, Kurds, of course, but also probably, as far as we know, Turks as well, opponents from Turkey as well, Armenians, etc. Now, for the French case, I want to be very clear about the way it was handled by the judicial system. Mr. Aydar said that the judicial system in France limited the inquiry, the criminal inquiry, to the case of Güney, who is a supposed assassin of the three Kurdish women. I say supposed because he has not been sentenced, and we have to respect the presumption of innocence. And he said that this was limited to his case. And when he died, of course, the case seemed to be closed. In fact, it's more complicated. And I must insist on that because from my point of view, it's the first time the judicial actually identified the criminal state. In fact, when the accusation was established after the inquiry, the long inquiry, which lasted at least 3 years, when the accusation was established by the district attorney, we call it procureur in French, of course, the assassinations were mentioned in this case, and they were authorized, and the DPP authorized the allegation that it was organized by Güney, who died, as you know. But at the same time, the MIT, the secret service of the Turkish state, was accused of conspiracy in the preparation of the crimes and the preparation of the attempt to free Güney, who was jailed in France, of course. So in this situation, which is very new by French history, as you know, other cases of murders of opponents have given rise to inquiry in France. The criminal state has never been formally accused of conspiracy. And I'm referring to a lot of opponents of different parts of the world, Africa or Middle East or elsewhere. And in no way was the criminal state accused formally. And this is very new because the MIT was accused of conspiracy. And this explains why in a latter stage, the French judicial decided to reopen the case to identify the people who might have helped Güne in his killings, presumably, and to identify all the accessories to the crimes, all the people involved in the conspiracy. And this case is ongoing, and it's going on for the past 2 years. And it's very interesting because it gives a very clear view of the network in Europe, the conspiracy of the network in Europe, which appears as a death squad and follows some sort of a hit list. And we know now that there have been cases in Germany. We know there has been an attempt against a member of parliament of Kurdish descent in Austria. We know, of course, of the Belgian case. And all this shows that we have a network organized by the Turkish state and through its MIT. And we know from a certain number of documents which have been produced that all this goes up to the higher part of the government, the summit of the government. In other words, goes back to the president of the Turkish state if the documents are convincing, and they are from my point of view. Now, we have to say something about the Turkish press. Prior to its repression, prior to the times when it has been, when the journalists have been imprisoned in Turkey, because they have given us enormous documents of great value during the first phase of the inquiry concerning Güne and the assassinations of the 3 women of activists, Kurdish activists. First, the Turkish press sent through its publications documents showing that Güne had a particular passport, which was very rare and usually given to people involved in activities, undercover activities. That was the first point. Then the Turkish press issued a document which was an audio document, which was put on YouTube, which was a meeting between Güne and people responsible of the MIT, asking him to explain how he would operate the assassinations and the attempts of sabotage of different nature. This was very unbelievable, but this was a part of the French file, which incriminated, of course, Güne, presumably responsible, as I said before, because she's not been sentenced. And then we had a very particular document coming directly from the MIT, which was an order to Güne to pass on to the attacks, to go on with the attacks. Now, this document was very important because it mentioned people, 3 persons in particular, who were known by the German authorities as people in charge of the Kurdish question. And the German press immediately announced that they would not continue cooperation with these people because they knew that they were involved in irregular activities, legal activities. Now, all this amounted to the accusation of conspiracy. And on top of that, but that's sort of detail, you might say, Gunet tried to escape from the prison in France. And for that reason, he met one of his friends coming from Germany, where he had lived a long time before, infiltrating the group of Turkish associations in the suburbs of Paris. And this person, to whom he gave a certain number of instructions or indications as to what he wanted, and this person, he was arrested afterwards, and he said that when Gunet referred to his mother, for whom he wanted these documents to be sent, he was in fact relating to the MIT. So therefore, we have enormous amount of accusations involving the conspiracy of the MIT. And during that same period, we discovered, of course, cases, as I said before, in Germany, in Brussels, of course, the ones mentioned by our persons who invited us to this conference, and also in Austria, but this came a bit later. In other words, we have, as I said before, a network and death squads, probably, following a hit list of people who are sentenced to legitimate murders, which are, of course, condemned by all international agreements. So what I have to say at this stage, as the case is ongoing, and I am like my friend Jan Fermon, I have the obligation to keep my evidence for the inquiring magistrate, who has been appointed 2 years now. What we have is today is a call I would make to the German authorities, the French authorities, the Austrian authorities, in one word, to all the states in Europe. They should not admit and they should prosecute any attempt, and this concerns the Belgian government as well, to have a criminal state assassinating people who are living regularly in their countries, and even people who might not live regularly because of problems with the access to the authorizations to live in a country. It's not admissible that states in Europe should not fight against these death squads, or these murder squads, whatever you want to call them, and that should not protect the people who are living regularly in their country. Now, if I'm saying this, it's because the 3 women assassinated in Paris in January 2013 were all legally in Europe. One had been admitted as a political refugee. Another one was living regularly because she almost was born in France. She arrived around 6 years old. And the last one was younger and had always lived in Germany. All these people live regularly in countries in Europe. And one should not accept that these European states should take no steps against political assassinations organized by a criminal state such as the Turks. So this is what I wanted to say. And I think this is very important for us as Europeans, as people living in Europe, to ask and impose on the European states that they should take steps against murder squads coming from a criminal state. Thank you.
Bu Antoine Comte emin ho derbazı Türkiye bibim.
Antoine, thank you very much to Antoine, and now we will continue in Turkish and then the questions.
Şimdi iki arkadaşımız var aramızda. Basın mensubu. Önce Acarer Berlin'den katılıyor. Buraya gelemeyişin nedenlerinden birisi de güvenlikti. Çünkü polis çok fazla dolaşmasına da müdahale ediyor. Çok fazla izin vermiyor. Acarer, buyurun, başınızdan geçeni biz dinleyelim.
Now we will listen to the two journalists. One of them is joining us from Berlin, and one of the reasons why he is not here today, it's because he is dependent on the security provided by the Turkish German government, and it's always a problem when he travels abroad. Therefore, he couldn't be among us today. And Acarer, we would like to hear to your story what happened to you.
Merhaba, herkese selamlar. Önce çok teşekkür ediyorum beni davet ettiğiniz için bu toplantıya. Başımdan geçeni çok fazla anlattım. Dolayısıyla bunun üzerinde çok durmak istemiyorum. Biraz vaktim el verdiğince Türkiye'de neler oluyor ve Avrupa'ya nasıl uzanıyor meselesi üzerine konuşmak istiyorum.
Thank you very much for inviting me today. Actually, I have spoken a lot about what happened to me. So today I would rather to talk about what's happening in Turkey and how it affects Europe and the connection with Europe. I would like to focus on this topic.
Bugün artık net olarak biliyoruz ki Türkiye'deki iktidarın faaliyetleri sadece politik değildir, aynı zamanda ekonomiktir. Bunu anlamak için de Türkiye iktidarının içinde bulunduğu suçlara bakmak gerekiyor. Uyuşturucu, silah, mala çökme, yolsuzluk ya da yasa dışı kumar iddiaları gibi.
And the activities of the Turkish government today is not only politics, but political, or it's also about the economy. And in order to understand or to clarify that, we need to focus on the crimes committed by the Turkish government, including narcotics, confiscation of the property, or illegal gambling whatsoever, and corruption as well.
Örnekler vermek istiyorum. Mesela Suriye Savaşı başladığında herkes işin politik olduğunu düşünüyordu. Neo-Osmanlı, cihatçı, yayılmacı bir amaç güdüldüğü söyleniyordu. İktidar tarafından hepimiz böyle değerlendiriyorduk. Oysa bugün gördüğümüz bu politika ile beraber, iktidarın ruhuna uyan politika ile beraber silah ticareti önemli bir yer alıyordu.
And when the conflict in Syria started, we thought it was of a political act, and everybody was talking about the Turkish government is acting in the framework of the neo-Osmanism, and they have a political aspirations. But today we see that the level, in addition to the politics suiting the Turkish government, it was about the weapons and trade of weapons and using weapons in the area.
Mesela Türkiye'deki inşaat sektörüne bakalım. İnşaatla uyuşturucu birbirine çok bağımlı. İnşaatla uyuşturucu nasıl birbirine bağlı demeyin. Kısa bir örnekle anlatmak istiyorum. Uyuşturucuyu sol sosyalist Kürt mahallelerine soktular. Özellikle gençlerin arasına ve böylece bir fikir bölünmesi sağladılar. Çocukların politikadan, siyasetten ele tek çekmesine olanak verdiler. Ayrıca mahallelinin huzurunu kaçırarak bu rant yerlerinden onları uzaklaştırmaya çalıştılar. Bu işlem tamamlandıktan sonra şunu gördük ki biz o mahallelerde yüksek binalar yükselmeye başladı. Yani mahallenin elinden aldıklarını uyuşturucu sokarak kendi açılarından bir ranta çevirdiler.
And I will also talk about the construction and the relationship to narcotics. You might wonder what kind of relationship they might have, but it's there. I will try to explain it with an example. They started introducing narcotics to the leftists and the Kurdish neighborhoods in the cities, where they started to generate the youth and depoliticize the youth, and which eventually caused the other problems. And when the inhabitants of the neighborhoods are disturbed enough, they started to send them away, start to regenerate the neighborhoods under a different name, and they started building skyscrapers and very tall buildings in those neighborhoods.
Bir başka örnek vermek istiyorum. Mala çökme olarak adlandırılan ve Türkiye'de FETÖ borsası denilen dosyalara ilişkin bir örnek. Tam anlamıyla bir gaspçılık hadisesi bu. Şöyle yapıldı. 2016'dan sonra herkes, neredeyse her zengin ya da malı olan FETÖ'cü olarak adlandırıldı. Cezaevine atıldılar. Bir kısmının hiçbir biçimde cemaatle ya da başka yapılarla alakası yoktu. Cezaevine atıldıktan sonra bu insanlar mallarına el konuldu ve bürokrasi, siyaset arasında paylaşıldı.
And another example that I would like to give is about the confiscating the belongings of the people, some people in Turkey. It wasn't actually a confiscation under the law. It was more as a looting. After 2016, anyone who had enough money and who had enough enough saving, or who were rich, they were labeled as the pro-FETÖ, being like the followers of the Gülen Jemaat, and then eventually they were arrested, and their money and all their belongings were confiscated, and it was shared between the politicians as well as the bureaucrats in Turkey.
Arkadaş biraz bu özellikle tehditler konusunda buradakiler o konuda size yönelik şeyleri duymak istiyorlar. Yani zaman açısından da onu dikkate alarak biraz o konuya dönseniz iyi olur.
Due to lack of the time, can we just focus on the threats that you have been receiving, which was actually the focus of this press conference? Thank you very much.
Zaten bu noktada toparlamak istiyorum. Yani bir biçimde düzenleri ve ekonomik faaliyetleri sürsün istiyorlar. Bunun için de toplumun, muhalefetin, medyanın susmasına ihtiyaçları var. Yani bunları yazarsanız, bu yarı yasal, yarı yasa dışı yollar üzerinde konuşursanız, paramiliter faaliyetleri, bunların sonucunda ortaya çıkan paramiliter faaliyetleri anlatırsanız, başınız dünyanın her yerinde olduğu gibi bu faşist iktidarların olduğu Türkiye'de ve Türkiye'nin elinin uzandığı başka yerlerde de başınız derde girer. Ben de başı derde giren gazetecilerden biriyim.
I was mentioning this corruption in Turkey because this is the system going on, and they would like to silence the society, the media, as well as the opposition. And when it's a message given to the oppositioners or anyone talking about these methods, which are actually semi-legal, and eventually the paramilitary powers emerging as a result of these activities, they just give a message: you cannot report about this, and doesn't matter where you are in the world, Turkey has a long hand and they will reach you, which is trying to give fear to the oppositions or anyone who would like to talk about this corruption.
Son olarak biraz belki saraya bağlı güçlerden bahsetmek istiyorum. Yani bir zincir olarak başı nasıl derde girer gazetecilerin ya da muhaliflerin sorusuna belki işaret verecektir bu. Günden güne Türkiye'de özellikle 2010 yılından itibaren bu ilişkileri sürdürmeye çalışan bir iktidar vardı. Ekonomik ilişkilerini, dolayısıyla ses çıkaranların karşısına paramiliter yapılar da çıkmaya başladı. Kim? Söz edildi. Sadat'ı görüyoruz. Onun dışında ekonomik sözde faaliyetleri sürdüren TÜGVA gibi yapıların aynı zamanda paramiliterizmle iç içe olduğunu görüyoruz ki Erdoğan'ın oğlu Bilal Erdoğan'ın oğluna ait bir dernektir. Milli Beka Etiketi gibi ucuz yapıları görüyoruz. Osmanlı ocakları gibi yapıları görüyoruz ve bunların kollarının yine tepeden bir zincirle aşağıya doğru uzandığını ve bir biçimde Avrupa'yı da bu kolların dolaştığını anlıyoruz. Nereden? Tabii ki tehditlerden ve saldırılardan muhatap olduğumuz.
Anyone reporting about these corruptions, they get in trouble. As a person who is in trouble because of reporting that, I would like to show the relationship between these incidents and the palace in Turkey. Since 2010, there are some organizations which have already been mentioned, such as Sedat, but there are also other associations and organizations led by Bilal Erdoğan, Erdoğan's son, or as well as Osmanlı Ocakları. These are the paramilitary organizations as well. They're all connected to each other and under the order of from the Turkish palace. How do we know it? Because wherever we live in Germany, for example, we receive threats from these organizations, which are also directly under the leadership of the palace in Turkey.
Son olarak şunu söylemek istiyorum. Siyasetin, iş dünyasının ve bürokrasinin iç içe geçmiş yine önemli olan şudur. Ekonomiye dayalı, ranta dayalı bir ilişkiler zinciri var. Bu ayaklar kırılmazsa ve bu ayaklar arasındaki ilişkiler yeterince anlatılmazsa bu düzenin sürecek olduğunu görebiliyoruz. Çünkü bu sözünü ettiğim uyuşturucu, silah, mala çökme, yolsuzluk ve kumar gibi bütün iddiaların kapsamında siyaseti, bürokrasiyi ve iş dünyasını birbirine iç içe geçmiş bir biçimde görüyoruz. Çok teşekkür ederim beni davet ettiğiniz için.
We need to focus on these economic and paramilitary relationships and as it's a system based on the interest. Unless we make it very clear these relationships between the narcotics, weapon trade, or illegal confiscation, this system will continue. So we need to make it clear in order to break the pillars of the system so that it will come and end. And once again, thank you very much for inviting me today.
Teşekkürler arkadaş. Sözü Hayko Bağdat arkadaşa veriyoruz.
Evet, bu mikrofon çalışıyor mu?
Thank you very much. Now we will listen to Hayko Bağdat. The floor is yours.
Çok kısa konuşmak istiyorum. Çok vaktinizi almamak için gerçekten zor bir konuyu konuşuyoruz. Ben de kendi deneyimimle Erdoğan rejiminin gerçekten Avrupa'da bir tehlike yaratıp yaratmadığını anlatmaya çalışacağım. 5-6 dakika konuşacağım.
Thank you very much. I will keep it as short as possible due to lack of time, but I will just try to explain my own experience and make it clear whether Erdoğan's regime constitute a threat, a danger in Europe.
Sanırım bugün otoriter rejimlerin sadece kendi coğrafyasını, kendi coğrafyasındaki insanları, kadınları, çocukları, çevreyi riske eden bir durum olmadığını en iyi anladığımız dönemlerden bir tanesi. Otoriter rejimler yakın coğrafyasına, hatta uzak coğrafyasına ne kadar büyük risk oluşturabiliyor? Bugün hepimiz, bütün dünya daha iyi görüyoruz.
And today we are in a period of time in which it's very clear that authoritarian regimes are not threat for the women, men, or children in their country or the environment in their own country, as well as the close and far geography. And these are the most evident days that we are actually seeing and experiencing it.
Erdoğan rejimi de otoriter bir rejimdir.
And Erdoğan regime is also an authoritarian one.
Ve Avrupa'da oldukça etkin faaliyetleri çok uzun bir süredir gerçekleştiriyor. Bunun için birkaç örnek, çok fazla örnek verildi arkadaşlarım tarafından.
And Erdoğan's regime is effectively running operations or is very influential in Europe, of which we heard several examples from my colleagues now.
Yaklaşık 60 yıllık tarihi olan Avrupa'daki Türkiye'lilerin bugün birbirlerini ihbar etme mekanizmasıyla, rejimin buradaki faaliyetleriyle sokaklarda birbirlerine düşman hukuku besledikleri bir sürece geldik. Sadece Almanya örneğinde sevgili Deniz Yücel bana konuk olduğu bir programında 6.000 ila 8.000 gönüllü ve kadrolu muhbir olduğunu söylemişti MİT'e çalışan.
And we know that the history of the Turks in Germany has a history of 60 years, and today we see that they actually snitch on each other, and in the streets they have these relationship enmity and hostility against each other. And in one of the programs that the journalist, Turkish German journalist Deniz Yücel was my interview partner, and he said there are between 6,000 to 8,000 Turkish informants in Germany.
Bugün Almanya'da bir başka devletin istihbarat ağına bağlı olan en fazla insan sayısı Türkiye MİT'ine bağlı insan sayısıdır. Bu Almanlar için ciddi bir risk. Raporlarında bunu bir tehlike olarak görüyorlar.
And it is very clear that in Germany the another country which is operating with so many informants is the Turkish intelligence service, and German authorities consider it as a very considerable, very clear threat and danger for their also national security.
Yakın zamanda ZDF televizyonunda Metin Külünk isimli bir AKP eski milletvekilinin Almanya'da Ermeni soykırımını için yapılacak olan eylemlere saldırılması gerektiği telefon konuşması yayınlandı. Erdoğan da Metin Külünk'ün yanındaydı o sırada. Bu çeteye, şu anda Almanya'da yasaklanan bu çeteye para yardımı, lojistik destek ve paramiliter güç haline getirmiş durumda Avrupa'nın ortasında.
And according to one report published or broadcasted by ZDF, a German channel, Metin Külünk, a former AKP parliamentarian, was on the phone giving instructions to target those who are talking about the recognition of the Armenian genocide. And at the same time, Erdogan was present just next to him. So this mob is using money and logistics and becoming one of the biggest crime organizations in Germany.
Türkiye'deki yaşananlarla ilgili Avrupa'da herhangi bir demokratik eylem hakkını kullanan vatandaşlar kendi komşuları tarafından fotoğraflanarak Türk istihbaratına şikayet ediliyor. Türkiye'de binlerce insan Facebook paylaşımları yüzünden, Avrupa'da yaptığı Facebook paylaşımları yüzünden ülkeye girerken gözaltına alındı, cezaevine atıldı.
And those people who are living in Europe and exercising their democratic rights, for example, protesting or demonstrating, they are being photographed, they are being documented by their neighbors, and they were all reported, informed to the Turkish intelligence service. As a result of this, there were thousands of people, they were arrested and eventually jailed and sent to prison upon their arrival to Turkey, as well as because of their Facebook post, which they shared while they were in Europe, they were arrested upon their arrival in Turkey.
Bugün Türkiye'deki siyasi kutuplaşma aynen Avrupa sokaklarında taşınmıştır. Avrupa sokaklarında da kitleler birbirine düşman haline getirilmiştir.
And the polarization in Turkey that we see, we know now also carried to the European streets, and we see the same polarization among the population from Turkey in the German streets, in the European streets.
Bundan çok daha tehlikelisi Avrupa'da paramiliter güçlerle Türkiye rejimi tarafından saldırılar, cinayetler işlenmektedir. Arkadaşlarım pek çok örneğini avukat arkadaşımız başta olmak üzere sizlere anlattı.
And more gravely, there are paramilitary organizations supported by Turkey are committing murders, committing assassinations in European countries, which my colleagues were just talking about and giving you examples.
2017 Aralık ayında bana gelen bir ihbar sonrasında benim de suikaste uğrayacağım Türkiye'den 3 tane tetikçinin bu iş için yola çıktığı ihbarı geldi bana.
And in December 2017, I was informed that there were 3 hitmen came from Turkey in order to assassinate me in Germany.
Alman güvenlik makamlarıyla bu konuyu çok uzun tartışmalar sonrasında değerlendirdiler, bizlerle görüştüler.
And German authorities, they also discussed and focused on this matter, and they also had interviews and meetings together with us.
Ve Alman devleti bu ihbarı onayladı.
And this threat was verified by the German authority, German government.
Ve yaklaşık o günden beri LK biriminin, Almanya'daki bu işe bakan güvenlik biriminin koruması altında yaşıyorum.
And since then, I have been living under the protection of LKA, the German state security directorate provided me with the security apparatus.
Bu bahsettiğim güvenlik düzeyi değişken olmakla birlikte bir dönem birinci tehlike yani neredeyse bir Alman devlet başkanı düzeyinde korumadan bahsediyorum.
And this security provided by the German government, although it depends on the time and the situations, but once it was as the same level as the German president, that I was under protection and I was protected like the German president because due to the graveness and seriousness of the threat.
Üzerimde çelik yelekle sahneye çıkacak kadar ciddi bir risk algısından bahsediyorum ki bu sanırım İkinci Dünya Savaşı dahil Avrupa'da hiçbir sanatçının başına gelmemiştir.
And once I had to go on the stage with wearing this bulletproof vest, which I think never happened since the Second World War to any artist, anyone going on the stage in Europe.
Elbette bir tek ben değil, Can Dündar'a, Berivan Aslan'a, sevgili arkadaşım Erke ve başka pek çok Türkiye'li aydına Avrupa devletleri böylesi istihbari ve fiziki koruma vermek zorunda kaldı.
And I'm not the only example, as well as Can Dündar, Berivan Aslan, or Acarer. These are my intellectual friends from Turkey or coming from Turkey. They have all been given physical protection and also received different threats. As a result, they were given protection by the European authorities.
Soru şu, Erdoğan rejimi Avrupa'da bundan daha büyük siyasi cinayetler işler mi? Gerçekten bu sorunun sorulmasının bile çok anlamlı olmadığını düşünüyorum. Çünkü tabii ki işliyor zaten, işlemekte ve işlemeye devam edecek.
And the question is being asked whether Erdogan's regime will continue committing assassinations against the opponents in Europe. The answer is in the question is a rhetorical question. Of course, they have been assassinating people in Europe and they will continue assassinating the people.
Son olarak bugünlerde bu toplantının niye daha önemli olduğunu düşündüğümü söylemek istiyorum. Bugünlerde niye daha hassasız ve niye bugünlerde Avrupa'daki dostlarımıza, arkadaşlarımıza bu tehlike için kulaklarına fısıldıyoruz?
And I also would like to talk about the timing of this meeting. Why is it so important to talk about it today, and why we are whispering in the ears of our European friends and trying to draw their attention on this situation, particularly, especially today.
Çünkü Recep Tayyip Erdoğan tarihinin en zor seçim sürecine giriyor. Kaybetme riski var.
Because Recep Tayyip Erdoğan is upgoing election process, one of the difficult ones in his history, because he will face a great risk of falling and losing.
Türkiye'de gerek iktidarda, gerek devlet yapısı içinde, gerek çeteler içerisinde çok büyük bir hesaplaşma söz konusu bugünlerde.
And we also see that there is a great calculation between the mobs within the state as well as the bureaucrats and politics in the state, that they are calculating and opening their cards against each other.
Sadece birkaç örnek, bu böylesi dönemlerde Türkiye'de neler olur örneği olarak Hrant Dink cinayetinden bahsedebilirim size. 2015 seçimlerinde kaybetmiş olan AKP'nin tekrar seçimi kazanmak için Ankara'da patlattıkları DAEŞ bombasıyla ölen 110 sivilden bahsedebilirim. Suruç'ta yine DAEŞ bombasıyla öldürülmüş 33 arkadaşımızdan bahsedebilirim. Türkiye devleti böylesi krizlerde en yakın tarihte 2015'te yaklaşık 300-400 sivilin ölümüyle sonuçlanan bir kaos yaşamıştır.
And I can just give you a couple of very significant examples. For example, the assassination of the Armenian journalist Hrant Dink, or after losing the elections in 2015, the Turkish government also used ISIS in order to assassinate 110 people in Ankara, as well as in Suruç, 33 youngsters were killed by the hands of ISIS. So these are all the incidents, violence that occurs when the Turkish government finds itself in a crisis.
Cumhuriyet Halk Partisi Genel Başkanı Sayın Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu bugün kürsüde siyasi cinayet beklentilerinden, korkularından bahsetmektedir.
And today, the head of the main opposition party, CHP in Turkey, Kılıçdaroğlu, in his speeches, he talked about the risk and the threat of political assassinations in Turkey.
Türkiye'deki bütün kesimler önümüzdeki süreçte kaosun, provokasyonun, siyasi cinayetlerin işlenme riskini çok yakın görmektedir.
And all the sides in Turkey, they find this risk very imminent about provocations, about the political assassinations that might take place in Turkey.
Avrupa'daki seçmenlerin Türkiye'deki seçim sürecindeki oy oranlarının ehemmiyetine bakacak olursak bunun Avrupa'ya sıçramamasının mümkün olmadığını düşünüyorum.
And if you consider the percentage of the elections, of the votes in European countries given by the people from Turkey, considering this, it's impossible not to think that these similar incidents might also take place in European countries.
Son söz olarak şunu söyleyebilirim. Bugün Erdoğan rejimi gerek kendi halkına gerek komşu ülkelere olduğu gibi Avrupa'da yaşayan milyonlarca Türkiye'linin kaderi hakkında da karanlık vaat etmektedir. Zor bir sürece giriyoruz ve eğer bir sıkıntı yaşanacaksa bütün bu sıkıntıların üzerine gelecekte bir takım kaygılar yaşayacaksak işte o bugündür. Bugünden itibaren önümüzdeki süreçtir. Bu yüzden de bu basın toplantısını çok önemli buluyorum. Bu uyarıları dostlarımıza söylemeyi kıymetli buluyorum ve daha kötü şeylerin olmasına mani olmak için hep birlikte el birliğiyle çalışmamız gerektiğini düşünüyorum. Teşekkür ederim.
And Erdogan's regime is not only bringing darkness to his own population or the countries surrounding it, but also the European countries. These are the things they can only promise darkness, but nothing else. So these are the days that we need to be concerned without any delay. So I find this very important that we have this press conference today in order to share our concern to our friends, to take necessary steps in order to prevent any tragic incidents might happen in future. So this is a very imminent threat which need to be taken very seriously. Thank you very much.
سپاس. ما في خفتني یه حواله رمزی فرد.
Ez jê rojnamevanên beşdar bûne, hevalên amade ne, bi giştî herkesî silav dikim.
First of all, I would like to welcome you all, our friends, our friends, as well as our the representatives of the press.
Li Türkiye derdorê 25 milyon gelî Kurd jiyan dike.
In Turkey, there are around 25 million Kurds living there.
Lêbelê aliyê kanûn, yasa hiç yek mafeyan tune.
However, in terms of legislations, in terms of law, they do not have any rights.
Gor kanun sistema devleta Türkiye le Türkiye gelî Kurd tune pirskereka Kurd jî tune pirskereka terörê heye.
And according in the eyes of the Turkish government, there are no Kurds in Turkey. There is no Kurdish question, but a terror question in Turkey.
Ki bahsa pirskereka Kurd mafê gelî Kurd bike gor kanûn siyaseta devleta Türkiye de gor kanûnên terörê têne pêşwazî kirin, têne ceza kirin.
Therefore, whoever talks about the Kurds, existence of the Kurds or their rights in Turkey, they will be tried and accused under the terror law.
Ji ber vê yekê parlamenter, rojnamevan, roşenbîr, siyasetmedar bi hezaran kes girtîne.
Therefore, there are hundreds, thousands of parliamentarians, intellectuals, journalists are arrested and kept in the prisons in Turkey.
Li Türkiye ev siyaseta li ser gelî Kurd û kesên opozisyon, muhalefetin li vê zextê li tenê li Türkiye çênake. Li dervê Türkiye bi taybetî jî li Avrupa demdirêje li ser kesê van de re jî vê zextê dike.
And this oppression of the Turkish government or Turkish state is not only limited to Turkey. This oppression against the Kurds, against the opponents, is also going on in Europe and for a long time now.
Divê mijarê da axatvanên berî min gelek tişkotin ji ber vê yekê ez gotinê wan naxwazim dubare bikim.
You have heard enough from my colleagues about these similar incidents. Therefore, I would like to keep my speech very short and not to repeat what they said.
Lêbelê ez siyaseta Avrupa ya ku li ser li dewleta Tirkiye dimeşîne dixwazim duvarî da tiştekî bêjim.
But I would like to say a couple of things about the Turkey or Turkish policy of the European countries.
Dewleta Tirkiye ew siyaseta li ser gelê Kurd li ser kesên mafê mirova, aktivîstên jin, kesên opozisyon li ser wan kuştin, girtin ve astê da dimeşîne Avrupa, Konsey Avrupa şirîkê vê siyasetê ye.
While Turkey is using violence or arrest or other legal cases against the women activists, politicians who are using their democratic rights, and the European Council of Europe is watching or witnessing these and doing nothing, in which they are becoming the partners in crime.
Ji ber ku Konsey Avrupa, Yekîtî Avrupa li ser kiryarên pêk siyaseta dewleta Tirk li ser gelê Kurd û demokrasî xwazan dimeşîne li hemberî wan bêdeng e.
It's because this crime, the partnership in crime, is because of the silence of Council of Europe as well as European Union in the face of the crimes committed by Erdogan regime against those who are fighting for democracy and for their legal and democratic rights.
Lêberê Konsey Avrupa dema werê hesabê wîya mesela Rusya'da çawa bêdengnamîne hemen biryara digire lê hemberî dewleta Tirk hemberî pirsgirêka Kurd ker û kor lal e.
But we know that Council of Europe, whenever it passed, whenever it suits their interest, they can immediately take an action, such as in the case of Russia and Putin. But when it comes to Turkey, they are very reluctant to criticize or to take any steps against the very similar policy conducted or implemented by the Turkish president.
Eva ji aliyê demokrasiyê, ji aliyê mafê mirova hiç avayekî nayê kabul kirin, ev siyaseteke duruye çifte standard e.
And this policy is unacceptable, cannot be accepted under democracy or human rights. It is nothing but a double standard.
Ji heta niha gelek insan ji terefê dewleta Tirk ve li Ewropa derveyî wela hate kuştin, em hêvî dikin ku ev mehkeme bibe wesîle dengê demokrasiyê mafê mirova ê ku Tirkiye dixwazin biriya vê mehkemê ji aliyê rêya giştî Ewropa jî bête bihîstin.
And we have seen the assassinations carried out in Turkey, and we hope that this hearing on the 11th will be an occasion for those who are fighting for democracy in Turkey and for the human rights in Turkey can be heard, and this opportunity can be used.
Çawa ku dadgeha derbarê PKK da biryareke gelekî dîrokî dabû li hemû Ewropa ew biryar bi rastî jî ji bo destpêkeke nû ji bo pirsgirêka Kurd bo demokrasiyê yanî li gelekî biryarekî giring bû ev mehkeme jî li kuştin û çeteyên Tirka li Ewropa li ser opozisyona divî warî da dikare biryarekî gelekî ciddî bide dewleta Tirk tengav bike ser wê esasî pêşiya vê siyaseta dewleta Tirk bigire zext bike li ser Tirkiye.
Similarly, in the past, Belgian courts, they gave historical decisions about the PKK, which started a new era in terms of Kurdish question. So we hope that this time, again, Belgian courts can give very historical decisions in order against these mobsters and killing squads in Europe, and put pressure on the Turkish government to bring an end to its policy.
Divê mijarê da li çapamenî jî rola wî gelekî giring e, em hêvî dikin ku ev siyaseta li devleta Türk li ser kesên muhalif li Avrupa kuştin, girtin, revandin divê mijarê da girîdayê vê mahkemê da çapamenî bi roleke mezin bileyze, zext çêke, raya giştî çêke û ser vê siyaset devleta Türk em bikarbin encamekî bikin.
And in that sense, the press, the media also has a very important role, while by following the trial and the case in Europe, they can bring an attention on the situation, on the threats, on the danger against the opponents in Europe. So we would like them to pay attention and play their role in this trial.
Ez cardinê ji ber hatına ve spas.
And once again, thank you very much for joining us, being with us today.
سپاس نها وقت جی درێژ بوو لێ پرسێ ڕۆژنامەوانە پرسێ کەسێ گوهداری بکەن چه پرس هەنە ئەم دخوازم پرسا بگرن.
It's been a long time since we started, but we will be happy to answer any questions that the members of the press might have.
Fermon.
Yani bu dava siz de ifade ettiniz. Sadece Belçika açısından değil, diğer ülkelerde de benzer olayların varlığından bahsettiniz. Bu davanın komşu ülkelere, Avrupa'nın diğer ülkelerine bir etkisi olacak mıdır? Benzer davalar açılabilir mi? Bu yönde bir takipçiliğiniz olacak mı?
You just mentioned that this is not an isolated case in Belgium. This trial might also maybe happen in different countries because there are similar threats and danger in the countries. What kind of outcome, what kind of influence do you expect on the other European countries? And do you expect any other similar cases to be open in European countries?
Well, first of all, okay, is this better? Okay, first of all, of course, the Belgian trial does not have as such a direct influence on trials or cases in other European countries. But I think it can contribute because of the facts, not because of the analysis we might make, or not because of any kind of comments we can make on the whole situation, but because of the facts. It can contribute to create awareness in Europe of the reality, of this phenomenon, and on the need to protect not only the freedom of speech and the freedom of press, etc., of the Kurdish people, because that is, I think, a different question. It's related, of course, but that's not what this is about. This is about the physical integrity and the life of people, which is threatened, as my colleague here on the floor illustrated by his own case, threatened in Germany, threatened in Austria, where a member of parliament of Kurdish origin is threatened by shown by this case in Belgium, where the physical integrity of two members, prominent members of the Kurdish community, is under threat. The European Article 2 of the Convention of Human Rights, European Convention of Human Rights, says that states must, of course, respect the right to life, but the European Court of Human Rights interprets that also as an obligation not only to respect the right to life, but also to protect it. So there is a legal obligation on European states to take this seriously. And I think it has not been taken seriously, at least not at a sufficient level. And the trial in Belgium will be again an illustration of that, because if today we have a trial, it is against the will of the prosecution. The prosecution actually didn't want to prosecute, and it's finally a judge. We have a judge in our system that takes a preliminary decision on whether a case will go to court, yes or no. The prosecution actually argued that it should not go to court, and the judge in the preliminary stage said that this should go to court and should be dealt with by a court as a criminal case. So we see a lot in Europe of hesitation, a lot of to recognize this phenomena, a lot of looking the other way, trying to avoid this for obvious diplomatic reasons, as long as Turkey remains member of NATO, we will see this kind of attitude. And so this is a fight we have to wage. And I think it's a fight we have to wage based on the facts, showing the facts to the public, showing the facts to the courts. And I think that's actually why that is the significance of this press conference. And it's the significance of the report that has been published by the KNK, which contains a lot of factual elements showing this activity of the Turkish state, paramilitary, not only because, of course, all states spy their population, all states try to gain some form of control of their expatriates living in other parts of the world, etc. That is, I would say, normal. But we are one step beyond. And I think that is what is important to see now and to create awareness on that. We are beyond, I would say, the normal spying, the normal control, the Facebook, etc., which is, of course, not right. But we are one step beyond now. It's about assassination, attacking the physical integrity of members of the Kurdish community and opponents to the present authorities in Ankara. And that is what we need to illustrate. And that is where we need to show the facts of that reality to the European public opinion and to the European authorities, to push them to take action on that, because this goes beyond everything we have seen and which maybe not rightly, but which we consider, well, almost as normal. Spying on opponents, I think our countries do the same. Assassinating opponents is a different matter. And I think that is what we have to bring to the attention of the public. And that is what very clearly the report published by the Kurdish National Congress shows. It's a pattern throughout Europe. It's not an isolated case in Belgium. It's not some crazy people who, for their own mental disturbance, because they are mentally disturbed, who are trying to do this. It's not about fanatics who are trying to do this. It's a state organized policy. And that is what we should show by the facts, again, by the facts, because that is the only thing, I think, which is convincing for the European public opinion, not the analysis, not the discourse on the regime in Ankara, the facts. That is what I wanted to, in answer to your question, what I wanted to say.
Oui, excusez-moi, je vais m'exprimer en français. Je voudrais poser les questions par rapport aux 3 dames qui ont été assassinées en 2013. Où en est le dossier? J'ai lu qu'ils étaient réouverts. L'année passée, le dossier a été réouvert. Et quelle est l'implication d'un avocat belge ici par rapport à ce qui s'est passé en France? Vous êtes avec Maître Comte par rapport à cette situation. Est-ce qu'il y a un suivi? Est-ce qu'il y a un espoir de voir la vérité sur cet assassinat? Est-ce qu'il y a un suivi réel juridique en France et en Belgique? Il y a une corrélation entre vous ici et là-bas. Et quel est votre pouvoir ici en Belgique par rapport à ce qui s'est passé en France, sur le terrain français? Merci.
Est-ce que vous me permettez de répondre en anglais, ou est-ce que ça vous pose problème? Parce que comme il n'y a pas de traduction en français, I will maybe shortly summarize your question first. The question of the gentleman is what is the actual status of the investigation in France, and what is the link between the Belgian and the French investigation? As you know, the investigation in France led not only to the arrest of a suspect and the preparation of a trial in the assize court in France. That trial was postponed on several occasions because the suspect in France was sick, Mergunet was sick, and actually ended finally because he died in prison of a brain tumor. It's my hypothesis that, but it's an hypothesis that when he was hired to do this job, probably he knew already that he was sick and had nothing to lose. And so in exchange of doing this, I can imagine that some other promises were made to his family or to his to the people he wanted to protect. So what is important there is that the French investigation also showed a direct implication of MIT. As you know, at some point, when the question was raised whether this was the act of a crazy individual, a fanatic who wanted to do this, or which is possible, of course, or whether this was an organized situation, some elements came to the surface. Actually, I think some elements came to the surface because of the rivalry within the Turkish state at that time. Erdogan at some point, it's very interesting because Erdogan actually didn't deny the implication of the Turkish state and the MIT. He simply tried to say these were the Gülen people in the MIT and in the Turkish state who did this, who organized this. And then a website, which I think is close to the Gülen movement, responded to that by publishing the internal document from the MIT, discussing how MIT had been organizing this matter, through whom, through which contacts, etc. Of course, not with the real names, but so they published an internal document from MIT, which showed that there was MIT implication to the very highest level, not just observing, following, but direct orders given, direct operational leadership over this operation. That, of course, was an important matter in the debate on the French case. Then also, there were some phone taps that were showing that there was a direct contact between people in Germany who were involved in a plan or to try to make the suspect in France escape, and that these people were in direct contact with MIT people in Turkey. There are phone taps that show this reality. And then 2 MIT agents were arrested in Suleimania in Iraq by the special forces of the HPG. They were in Iraq to conduct a similar assassination plan on PKK leaders. They were arrested and they testified, including on the case in France. They brought elements of information on the participation of MIT in the French plot, and these elements were made public by the people who arrested them. So there are in the French file a series of very concrete factual indications of direct MIT involvement. The French authorities, of course, when Ömer Günay died, in criminal law, when a suspect dies, normally the criminal case ends because you can't prosecute dead people. You can't prosecute somebody who is not alive. The French authorities, I think for reasons which were very clear, tried to end the case at that time. They said, oh, Ömer Günay is dead, so we can't continue a criminal investigation, we can't continue. But of course, while all these elements on MIT implication came to the surface, in a criminal case, you not only prosecute the one who executes the plan, but also those who give the orders, who organize, who instigate, who are in fact the top of the plan. So the victims, the families of the 3 victims, then took a very important initiative and made a new complaint, actually, to the French magistrate, to the French investigating magistrate, requesting that the case be continued. And so there is a French magistrate investigating into this specific aspect now. Who gave the orders? Who organized? Who is behind Ömer Günay? Now, of course, when we knew that the case in Belgium, that the plot in Belgium was actually organized, that I would say, the operational leadership of that plot in Belgium was situated in France. We, of course, tried to draw the attention of the French authorities to that matter. Because we don't know, but there possibly might be a link. We know that because the pictures are there, again, and the links are described in the document made by the Kurdish National Congress. We know that some of the individuals that were involved in the plot here in Belgium, especially Zakaria Çelikbelik and Jakub Koç, had been meeting with, were very often at the embassy in Paris, had been meeting with the ambassador, had been meeting also with the former ambassador, with the former number 2 of the MIT, etc., etc. So there are a series of indications that there is a close link there, in addition to the link in direct link with Ankara. Jakub Koç, for example, who is now standing trial here in Belgium, has been security agent in the embassy for several years. So he acted as a security agent in the embassy in Paris for several years. In a period prior to the assassination, but it shows very clearly that these people have an operational basis in France linked to the Turkish state. So we drew the attention of the French investigating magistrate to this situation. What I think and what I can say about this, and unfortunately that Antoine Comte is not with us anymore, but what I can say about this, I think, is that what is astonishing, strange, is that, as I told you before, there was an investigation conducted in France at the request of the Belgian judge. We received, of course, the result of that investigation in France, because it was transferred to the Belgian judge, and we could read it. We then found out that the French services who conducted that investigation only gave some parts of it to the French investigating magistrate investigating the case of the murder on the 3 women. So the French judge actually received the result of the investigation in France, requested by the Belgians, received it by us, which is, I would say, a rather strange way of acting. So we feel that in France, and we felt it already before, that there are very serious reservations to go in depth into this. Not with the investigating magistrate, because I think he is very clear and he wants to really conduct this to the end. But there are other forces at work, other forces which are hiding, I would say, who do not want to have this conducted into the. And let me give you a last example, because I think facts are important. One of these people in France, active in France, when the French tap his phone at the request of the Belgian judge, they find out that he is very nervous about the fact that Chronopost, which is something like DHL, etc., has lost something he has sent with Chronopost to Turkey. And when Chronopost asks him, what is it? He says, it's a list with names and telephone numbers. So actually, it's information. It's documents with information, a list he established. The French authorities interrogate that man. The French police interrogates the man on his relation with the Belgian plot. And of course, they ask him, which list, what kind of information did you collect? Who was on your list? And then he says this. He says, I've been wandering, walking around in French cemeteries. And whenever I saw a name that looked Turkish or that sounded Turkish, I noted the name. So actually, I established a list of people buried in French cemeteries, Turkish people buried in French cemeteries. Now, I think the logical question would next be, and what are the telephone numbers? Do these dead people have a telephone line in their grave? Is it a landline or do they have a mobile phone in their grave? Huh? I think that would be the logical question. Huh? Or another approach would be to tell the man, listen, you're talking rubbish. Tell us the truth. Huh? What were these? Huh? The French investigators forget to ask that question. So they take the answer, which is, I mean, rather crazy. Huh? They take the answer for granted. They don't go into the question. They don't go any further. And I think it's an example, one of the examples, there are many like this, which shows that there are both forces who do want to conduct such investigations and who do want to know the facts and to act upon the facts. And there are many also, many forces in the shadow, in the dark, that don't want to go this kind of investigation to go to its full capacity, that don't want to know the facts because the facts are probably disturbing.
Suppose
Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, just one more. You know that we leave the door open, of course, for people via the chat platform. Okay, and we received indeed not only a question but also a remark from a person, and from press media. I think it might be Turkish, I don't know. Question is quite obvious, and I think it's all about what we are discussing today. What is Hayko doing at around the same table with two terrorists, Remzi and Zubeyir, not both terrorists? Maybe somebody needs a short answer to, maybe you, Jan.
And هناك قلتي كنت شو الجماعة terrorist رو نشتين هذا بيبلغ جواب ما بدي قلنا terrorist.
Well, I can. If let me just make a small observation, and then of course, if he wants to answer such a question, then I will. As you know, the Belgian judicial authorities, the Belgian police and the Belgian judicial authorities conducted an investigation into the activities, amongst others, of Zubeyir Aydar and Remzi Kartal. The prosecution tried to bring this to the court based on terrorism accusations against these two gentlemen and many others, media outlets, etc. And the Belgian Court of Appeal, 2 times, and the Belgian Court of Cassation, finally, which is the Supreme Court in our country, finally decided that there was no question of considering these 2 gentlemen as terrorists. And all the others that were prosecuted or that were under investigation. The Belgian authorities, I think very rightly, Belgian judicial authorities very rightly said that what is going on in Turkey is a long-term armed conflict between a civil war, between Kurds and Turks. And that to civil wars and to parties in civil wars, you can't label them as terrorists. You can't prosecute them, you can't criminalize them as terrorists. You can only say that in such a situation, the laws of war apply. And so actually the question to this, the answer to this, I think, rather rhetoric question, because I don't know if the one who sends the question really wants an answer, but the answer to that question lies in the decision by the highest Belgian judicial authorities, who officially said that the question, the activities of the Kurdish community and the activities in particular of these 2 gentlemen are not to be considered as terrorists, but are activities related to a civil war in which parties should be on a foot of equality and not one party criminalized and the other one, the state party, condoned or accepted as the only legitimate one.
سپاس جبو کی برسود هایکو پرسکیش هایکو
Tabii
هم
ben
ها
cevap vereyim isterseniz öyle bitirelim. İki teröristin yanında ne işim var diye soruldu değil mi? Türkiye'de terör ve terörizm kavramı çok değişkendir ve bu tarihsel olarak değil, yıllar içerisinde birkaç yıl önce birkaç yıl sonra çok fazla değişebilir.
The definition of terrorism in Turkey is very flexible, and it's not something that going through the history. It can be a couple of years ago or a couple of years later. It might be completely a different definition.
Örneğin bugünlerde benim hakkımda Türkiye'deki savcıların açtığı soruşturmalarda çok ciddi terörist olduğum iddia ediliyor.
And nowadays, in all the indictments against me prepared by the Turkish prosecutions, I am accused of being a terrorist myself.
Hakkımda pek çok terör örgütü propagandası, terör örgütü bilmem nesi soruşturmaları var. Bunlardan bir tanesinin sebebi çok ilginç. Sadece Osman Kavala resmi paylaştığım için terör örgütü üyeliğim de sorgulanıyor şu anda.
And I'm also being charged with the propaganda of terrorism. And among others, there's a very interesting example. I'm being charged as a member of terrorist organization or being propaganda for terrorism just for sharing a picture of Osman Kavala.
Dolayısıyla belki de uyarıyı masanın bu tarafına yapmak lazım. Bana dikkat etsinler, terörle arasına mesafe koysunlar. Çünkü hakkımda çok fazla terör soruşturması var. Öyle söyleyeyim yani.
So the question should be actually on the other side of the table to inform them that they are sitting on a table with a terrorist because they are not considered themselves. So I am now being charged as a terrorist.
سپاس نه جبو همو بشتاروانا و جبو صبر هوایی کو گهداری کرن و ویده هاتن بشتار بون نونرین چاپمنی هم سپاس کن حوالن ما خارنکی سویک جی آماده کرنه بلا کس نچه هم نها جوین آخوا خلاص دکن فرمو جبو خارنه جی بلا حوال تشتکی جی بخون پاشه همچن سپاس جبو هوا همیت.
Thank you very much for joining us today and for your patience. And please help yourself to the snacks prepared by our friends outside.